Regularly review employee timesheets for missed punch and missed day exceptions. For each such exception, check to see if the employee has submitted a request, which, when approved by the Cronus approver, would clear the exception. Let's first look at where you can locate timesheet exceptions and pending requests. That is to say, requests which have been submitted by employees, but have not yet been approved or rejected by Cronus approvers. On your screen, under the Manager Self-Service tab, timesheet exceptions are listed below the box Timesheets Awaiting My Approval. The exceptions box on the left side are exceptions for the current pay period. The exceptions box on the right side are for the previous pay period. You would use the box on the right side on the Monday following the end of a pay period. You can click on the word exceptions to open the report. It's the same information, but in an easier to read format. To go back to the previous screen, you can either click the UKG logo or the back button next to exceptions. You can export the exceptions into an Excel spreadsheet by clicking the three dots on the right-hand side and then clicking Export. Uncheck the box for Display Header Footer and export the file as Excel 2007, and then click Export and it will generate the file. Pending timesheet change requests are located directly below the exceptions boxes. These requests may include add punch in requests for missed punches in, add punch out requests for missed punches out, and add time entry requests for when someone missed both a punch in and a punch out for the same day, and add time entry requests to report remote work or off-site professional development. There may be other timesheet requests in this area, such as for canceled lunches or the conversion of overtime or time worked on a calamity day to comp time. But these other requests don't directly relate to clearing exceptions, so we won't consider them here. Pending time off requests are located below the pending timesheet change request box. The report heading reads All Open. So now that we've gone over navigation, let's revisit the topic. Why should you, as a timekeeper, be interested in employee exceptions? Because you need to see if the employee addressed each exception by submitting either a change request or a time off request. If not, you want to remind them to do so. Let's look at some examples of matching exceptions to requests. You can track your matching of exceptions to requests using pen and paper, Excel, or whatever other method you wish. In this example, I'm going to use Excel. The first thing I'm going to do is export the exceptions list to an Excel file and then save it. Next, I'm going to put a couple headers here. And these headers and the information I put in here will help me to keep track of what I've done in regards to each of these exceptions. So the first exception we're looking at is for Judith Ainsworth for 9/16/24, and it's a missed punch. A missed punch exception can be matched to either a timesheet change request for an add punch in or an add punch out. Under pending timesheet change requests, I see an add punch out request for Judith Ainsworth for 9/16/24. So I simply note the employee has submitted a request, which will clear the exception when approved. The next exception is for 9/18/24 for Judith Ainsworth for a missed punch. And here I see two requests for an add punch out for 9/18/24. And these requests are for the same punch out time of 3:16 p.m. The approver will only be able to approve one of these requests. The approver must reject the duplicate request. So I tell the principal to approve one request and reject the other. In this box, I note that the employee has submitted a request and also make a note of what I told the principal. Judith Ainsworth also has a missed punch for 9/19/24. When I look at the pending timesheet change requests, I don't see any add punch in or add punch out requests for 9/19/24. I therefore remind her to submit a request. She notes that she already has submitted a request. However, I note to her that she submitted two requests for 9/18, and possibly she meant one of those to be for 9/19. However, she'll need to submit one for 9/19. She agrees to do so. I note that I've reminded the employee to submit a request. Judith Ainsworth also has a missed punch for 9/20/24 and 9/23/24. There are add punch out requests for both dates, so I note the employee has submitted the requests. The next employee with exceptions is Ashton Cowie. He has a missed punch exception on 9/16/24. I have to scroll down a little bit under pending timesheet change requests to see his request. And here I see that he submitted an add punch in request for 9/16/24. So I note the employee has submitted the request. Ashton Cowie also has a missed day exception on 9/19/24. There is an add time entry request for Ashton for 9/19. In this add time entry request, Ashton reported the time he started work for the day, 7:30 a.m., and the time he ended work for the day, 4 p.m. So I note the employee has submitted the request, which, when approved, will clear the missed day exception. Ashton Cowie also has a missed day exception on 9/23/24. There are no other timesheet change requests for Ashton Cowie for that date, so I look under time off request for approval, and I see that he has submitted a time off request for that day, which, when approved, will clear the missed day exception. So I note he submitted a request. Layla Rivers has a missed punch exception on 9/23/24. There is no add punch in or out request submitted by Layla for 9/23. So I email her to remind her to submit a request. She emails back that she's out of the country now and for the next week to attend a funeral and is unable to access Kronos to submit a missed punch request. But she notes that she left work for that day at 3 p.m. Because she can't access Kronos to submit a request, I forward her note on to the principal with a request for an OK to add her requested punch to her timesheet. The principal emails me back it's okay to add, so I add the punch to her timesheet. I do so by clicking the open timesheet or the pencil icon next to the exception for her. And I scroll down and I enter 3 for 3 p.m. and click Save. Next, I attach the email from the principal noting it's okay to add the employee's punch to her timesheet. And I do so by clicking the paperclip icon, clicking Choose, and then I select the note, and then I scroll down and click Upload and click Close. And now that note is attached, which has a principal's approval to add that punch. To go back to the main screen, I click UKG, and I scroll down, and I see that Layla's exception is now gone because I've added the punch. The next exception is for Lorna Sharp for 9/23/24 for a missed punch. Here I see under change requests an add punch in request for Lorna for 9/23/24. So I note that Lorna has submitted her request. So the final two exceptions are two missed day exceptions for Jack Valance for 9/18/24 and 9/23/24. I look and I see that there are no add time entries or time off requests for Jack Valance for these days. In this example, Jack works at a school and uses Red Rover to report his absences. So I check Red Rover to see if he reported his absences there and possibly that they just didn't come over into Kronos. I see that he reported both absences in Red Rover, noting personal illness, and for some reason the absences didn't come over into his Kronos timesheet as they normally should. Because the employee has reported his absence in the system, I can use that information to update his Kronos timesheet. To update his timesheet, I go back to the exceptions area, click the open timesheet or pencil icon next to one of the exceptions, and then I scroll down, and here I'll add the same absence type and amount that Jack Valance reported in Red Rover. So in this case, it's 8 hours, and under time off, personal illness, and I click the little notes icon and I note the Red Rover absence number and click Save. And now I'll do the same thing for the other absence. Once again, I'll click the note in the notes area and note the Red Rover absence number. Then I click Save. And I click the back button, and Jack Valance's missed day exceptions are gone as well. And I just note what I did with those exceptions added to timesheet. So those are some examples of how to systematically go through exceptions and match them to timesheet change requests, time off requests, or in less common circumstances, to Red Rover absences. So let's review this section. A missed punch exception can be matched to either a timesheet change request for an add punch in or an add punch out. A missed day exception can be matched to either a timesheet change request for an add time entry or a time off request. It's important to document the adding of punches that you make directly to an employee's timesheet. If you add a punch to a timesheet because the employee is unable to submit a missed punch request using Kronos, you must add the employee's written request to add the punch, whether that request was made by email or on paper, along with the Kronos approver's OK to add the request to the employee's Kronos timesheet. This provides backup documentation for the added punch. This particular slide generally just applies to schools or to a small number of departmental employees who use Red Rover. If an employee has reported an absence in Red Rover, and that absence didn't come over into their Kronos timesheet as it normally should come across, add the time off directly to the employee's Kronos timesheet just as it's listed in Red Rover. Instead of adding an attachment as backup documentation, simply note the Red Rover absence number in the comment field. See the School Timekeeper's Guide for additional instructions on what to do if you cannot add to Kronos the same exact absence type as listed in Red Rover. If you see pending requests for a pay period which are not approved by the Monday morning after the end of the pay period, please remind your Kronos approver to approve these requests before approving employees' timesheets. Otherwise, the approver will get a lot of errors when trying to approve the employee's timesheets and will not be able to approve those timesheets.